We are ready to go.
All right. Good evening. This is February 15th and the Environmental Advisory Council will be meeting. Let's start our call to order. Cindy Mahalo. Here. Joe Pinto.
Here.
David Galash.
Here.
Janet Cravanis. Janet had mentioned she is en route and is expected to arrive in about 5 to 10 minutes, and we will note the time to the roll call. All right, a moment of silence. Let's keep in our thoughts anyone that's struggling today. Allegiance. I didn't want to interrupt you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. All right. We want the agenda. We want to put forth motion to approve our agenda for this evening. Any additions or anything else that needs to be noted? Oh, all right. So we will approve the agenda as it stands. And the public comments for agenda items only. If there's anyone in the public that would love to speak, you have a right to get up to the public stand, give your address and any issues you have on our agenda items. Being none, we will get ready for the minutes. Item number 6, accepting, considering and approving the minutes from our January 18th, 2024 meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? A motion was put forth by Joe Pinto, seconded by David Galash for us to accept our January 18th minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion stands 100%. All right. Item number 7, land development review. Discussion of possible action is, and I think I spoke with Tim, instead of taking 14, 16, and 18 Campus Boulevard and 11, 15, and 17 as 2 separate, we'll do 14 Phillips Lane first and give a chance to go into that. And that way we can give all of our time for Campus Boulevard and combine them. Okay. 14 Phillips Lane. I actually had been out to the property and reviewed the property, and there is a variance. They are meeting with the zoning commission this evening. Presently, our variance allows for them to develop 15% within the 15 to 25% slope. They are allowed to develop 7,863 square feet. They're proposing to develop 21,500 square feet in that slope. In the 25 percentile slope, they're allowed to develop 1,681. They're proposing to develop 11,200 square feet. So I know Cindy and I spoke. Cindy, you want to kind of dig in? And Tim, if you could bring up 14 Phillips Lane. This is a 2.75 acre property that I understand was previously purchased and previously was before the zoning board. You don't have the. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I saw that in the agenda online. When there were not links. Usually there's links in the
Right.
agenda.
So,
There's no links. I don't know.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I have them. I want the record to note that Janet Cravanis has showed up.
505.
Yes. You know what, Tim, 14 Phillips is on the agenda for the zoning for the hearing this evening. Can we use it that way, or? The zoning, 14 Phillips is going through before the zoning this evening?
Yeah, you're gonna have. Yeah, it's a little different for them. It's the plan's probably the same.
Yeah.
What's happening before zoning is different than what's happening for before you, but that's okay.
There an email address I can send the files to, so they can pull them up?
Well, isn't he looking at the zoning agenda right now?
I don't
He
think
can't
it's
click on that?
8.4. Here you go. Bill, here you go.
Steve, I have
You look at site plans.
Yeah, there you go.
Steve, I have a question for you. That's what happened to me when I tried to access the plans from the public agenda.
Yeah,
That didn't seem right.
it's not.
It seemed like there were 2 glitches. First, our agenda didn't have the links, and then the zoning hearing agenda you couldn't get through.
One second.
I'm willing to start talking about the property while we work through these technical details. Okay, so I think I'm going to focus my comments, and these are comments that I've drafted that I'm going to share with the zoning hearing board, but I'm going to focus my comments on potential stormwater management impacts of this property. And I think it's important to note that the actions of one person can have a cascading impact miles away from their property. But I'm just going to talk right now about the proposed disturbance to steep and very steep slopes. Sheila had shared the statistics, but to simplify it, in the very steep slope, in the steep slopes, which are not quite as steep, in the steep slopes, the maximum allowed is 15%, and they are proposing to disturb 41% of the steep slopes. When you go to very steep slopes, the maximum allowed is 5%, and they're proposing
All
to
right, what's the
disturb
info?
33%. So for steep slopes, they're proposing
Yep.
to disturb more than double what's allowed. And for very steep, they're proposing to disturb 6 times what is permissible.
Okay.
I would argue, and these are
I'll try
the,
here, but thank you.
the standards
I'll talk
put
to you.
in the Township Code, which is Chapter 134, Slope Conservation. This part of the Township Code states that protecting existing sensitive features of the land is the first and most important stormwater management best practice. So while the plans show a swale, they show a 140-foot long infiltration trench. To me, those are secondary and not the primary thing. The code clearly states that the first thing to do is to protect the existing features. And then it lists about 10 reasons that should be done. And you should protect slopes from harmful disturbances, such as excessive grading, landform alteration, and extensive vegetation removal. If you look at the plans, when he pulls them up, you'll see that the most extensive grading appears in the steepest slopes, and they make them even steeper, adding a 2-to-1 gradient, and they will remove the trees from that heavily wooded area. So that's diametrically opposed to item A. Item E says that we should permit only those uses that are compatible with the development of the slope areas in order to avoid accelerated erosion, soil failure, and other conditions that could create a danger to life and/or property. And if you look at where they propose to do that steep grading, it is uphill of the adjacent neighbor whose home is near that edge of the property. The code also talks about preventing development that would cause excessive erosion and resultant reduction in the water carrying capacity of the water courses. What's the creek right behind it? Crum Creek?
Yes.
Is right behind it, and you're going to talk more about that. But when you have enhanced runoff, you likely get excessive erosion and sediment buildup, which would go to Crum Creek and then end up in grading the reservoir. And we already know that Aqua periodically has to dredge the reservoir because of all the sediment that goes in there. And before they dredge it and the bottom of the reservoir comes up, it has reduced capacity. The 2 last things that I'm going to cite from the code are the purpose of this slopes conservation code is to protect individual and adjacent landowners in the township and other municipalities downstream from the possible harmful effects of inappropriate grading and development, and to protect those individuals who choose, despite apparent dangers, to develop or occupy land with steep slopes. So I think it's pretty clear that what they're proposing does not align with the code.
A couple other facts to consider. This property is 2.75 acres. The house is, and this is relatively small compared to some of the neighbors in this area. Their house would be 3,258 square feet, and the new impervious surface was 5,406 square feet. So In comparison to one of the properties next door is an 11,000 square foot home, not including the impervious surface. So I can appreciate that they've done some measures to kind of control things. I do appreciate that they did put in the infiltration bed, like you said. I would have preferred to see the infiltration bed up by the house to control the driveway runoff. And actually, if you look at the particular landscape, it's similar to a bowl. And so a lot of the neighboring properties flow right into this particular property. So he has a difficult situation. A couple other things that are concerned, and Cindy mentioned that, you know, it is a tributary to Crum Creek behind the property, but it is a high quality cold water fish. We wanted to see if there was any soil samples that were done. We wanted to know what the water table level was. We wanted to know what the area below the trench was. Was that already a saturated area? We wanted to see if there was hydric soils. And we understand, or I've been told that that is a wildlife corridor, that area behind the stream. So we wanted to see if a wet wildlife study can be done. Another thing that brings a great concern for us as taxpayers is the township just on Monday night, the Board of Supervisors voted to approve, you know, funding stormwater mitigation issues, and they are addressing that on Boot Road between Phillips and Goshen. So that area already is experiencing some stormwater issues. The taxpayers are going to be paying to rectify that. And we don't want to add to their burden by increasing the amount of water in there.
And Sheila, I think you mentioned to me that of the 10 stormwater situations that the township is addressing, this is like number 3
Yes, yeah.
in terms of them responding to it
right.
immediately, you know, and soonest. Steve, do you know what the associated cost for the Boot Road?
We don't have cost yet. We're
Yeah, they're
Okay.
just going after
we're
bid.
early on in that
Yeah.
part.
But what's great is, now they also, what was interesting, I did see on the paperwork, they did offer an opportunity. Because of this infiltration bed, it's going to require maintenance by the property owner in perpetuity. And they do give an opportunity for the township to have an easement to go check this infiltration things. That sounds lovely. However, that puts the burden again back on the township and our taxpayers to address an issue that we really kind of don't feel is beneficial. So I would love for us to kind of encourage them not to develop this property in this particular things, maybe go back and get creative. Maybe there's something else they can do to still achieve their goal of wanting to develop their property. We respect property rights, but from what I see, I don't see how we can in good faith encourage this to go forth.
Sheila, when you looked at the tax records, when did the property, the current owner purchase the land?
It was probably, I believe like 3 years ago, or it was, and previously it went through, a previous owner from Mill Hollow Lane had said that this property had prior tried to go and get approved and they were rejected, and this is why it was sold.
So in my way of thinking, in my business, I work with private equity firms. And before they make an investment in any company, they do due diligence. They thoroughly research the potential investment to see if they're going to get a return on their money. And to me, the burden is on the person who purchases that property, who 3 years ago decided to spend the money to buy this property in the hopes that they could develop it. To me, it's their responsibility to look at the code, to look at the land, and to see, does the code allow development of this land? Just because they decide to buy a piece of property, I think it's their responsibility before they do that to make sure that they can do what they hope and dream to do.
All right, I know Dave researched this, and I know this is his first chance at looking at. Dave, what was your takeaway from going into the plans?
Yeah, I think I share a lot of the same feedback that you offered. You know, for me, I think potential relocation of the trench further uphill to the impervious surfaces would be one mitigation that they could potentially rework and represent. And then additionally, they did not include the landscaping plan as well,
Yes.
correct? Because I would also be interested
Right.
in seeing that as well. But
And I
Cindy,
did see there was a floodplain notation on the back of the property, and although this particular area is not, they're not encumbering on the floodplain, it is in the back of the property, and that was another issue. I think they were coming in 25 feet where they're doing the trench. So, you know, our recommendation is there a better placement further up? Because when they come in, I think it was a 263 elevation point is when they're putting the trench.
can you zoom in on the
Yeah.
on the
If you look
The
here,
illustration.
see right here. Go back to the- so you see, here is the stream, and this here area down here is where the floodplain is in the back. This is the property line, and they're proposing 24 feet from the property line to begin the trench. And remind you now, this is an entire wooded lot. All of these trees will be removed. Not noted on the plan. The landscaping plans were noted.
Yeah, but you understand, this is a conditional use. It's very different than this, they're not coming in for land development rights.
Okay.
This property is already been determined that it's a buildable lot. That was done when the property was when that area of Phillips Lane was laid out.
Right.
That's already been passed. What we're looking now is somebody actually putting a house on that lot. And so there is a vested right for them to do that, okay? So what your focus, I think, would be best in is coming up with, like you're suggesting, if you can move that up further, those kind of things. Those are the kind of things that you could say that would potentially help limit the amount of disturbance. You know, there are certain rights they have, but there is a conditional use that they have to go through because of disturbing the steep slopes.
And then additionally, potential use of more pervious surfaces, as well.
Right.
For the driveway.
So I think our focus is, he's saying, it's to just give specifically what we suggest that they make to reject this plan as it stands, but encourage them to make these other accommodations, which will allow them be able to accomplish their development within respecting for the environment and the neighbors, everything of that nature. So we
So,
spoke,
so Steve, if this is a conditional use and we're not going to see a landscape plan, then what is the scope of our ability to comment?
Well, I think that, again, you're talking about their disturbance of steep slopes, right? And so
Right.
that's what you're looking at. And so if you see ways that they could do this or recommend ways that they could disturb the least amount of steep slopes in the process, that's what you're after, right? I mean,
because that's the only thing, the variances for that, just the steep slope. Because like you said, he's already able to develop the property. based on
These
the
are,
neighbors.
I mean, this is not like a landscape, this is not a land development plan, like I'm coming in and I want to create 5 lots and this is going to be a lot. This was done, I'm guessing probably 20 or 30 years ago, that this lot was determined by the township at the people at that time, because most of these houses on this street have been built for quite a few years.
Since
This is not
1963.
this is not a new plan that came in a couple weeks ago or a couple years ago.
2 separate properties. So remember, there was 2 separate properties, and they merged them into one property.
I think that's the property next door.
Oh, no, because if you look at this segment, you pull up on the records, 14 Phillips Lane. There was one that went down behind that, and then this particular property, because 14 Phillips Lane was originally says like 1.7 acres, and then the other property, and the 2 of them combined equal the 2.75 acres.
That could be, they could have reverse subdivided them, is what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay, and that may have been done at some point, but you know, if that's the case, you're actually having less impact than
Right.
what you would have had if you'd have had 2.
can
But-
we give any recommendations? Because in many ways, the neighboring properties to this particular property are kind of exacerbating the issues that he has with water. Can anything be done in terms of encouraging the neighbors themselves to take some responsibility for their stormwater? I know it's.
I don't think you can put upon somebody who's already built, but what I think you can say, like, if you look at this and, you know, if you think there's a way to move the house, let's say, closer to one side or further to one or further back or whatever to disturb less slope, then that might be your recommendation.
Mhm.
You know, I'm looking here, there's a ton of steep slopes on this edge. Could you move the house further back and do it? The problem then is you're now moving closer to the floodplain,
Right.
which is you're saying you want to stay away from.
Right.
And I get that. I understand. We don't want to encourage people building near the floodplains. But I'm also looking at a lot that has a lot of impact on the environment,
Yes,
no matter how we develop it. So
Yes.
what you're looking for is what's the least amount of impact that you can recommend to the planning commission and to the board on this one. I will tell you, I happen to know that this one got pulled. It's not going to be heard tonight.
oh,
It's going
okay,
to be continued.
okay, good.
So it won't be heard again. What I don't know is will it be on the planning commission to go before the board of supervisors? Because there's two different tracks
Yeah.
that this particular property is going on. There's a variance requirement that they have to go through zoning, and there's a conditional use requirement that they have to go through the board of supervisors. You're really commenting for the purpose of the conditional use,
Oh.
and
okay.
that's the side that you're focusing on.
Steve, can you repeat that?
So there's this track. In this case, there's two issues.
Yep.
There's a variance because they are going to, because there's this disturbance of steep slope, right? There's a percentage of disturbance of steep slope. There's also an issue because they're building in steep slope that there's a conditional use that has to go with it. And so that adds to what the requirements are. So they can't just, it's not just a variance that they're getting, or it's not just conditional use. They have two tracks,
And they're both because of the steep slopes.
and they're both
One's
because
disturbance and one's building, and which board is looking at conditional use?
the board of supervisors.
Okay, and which one is the planning board looking at?
The planning board will be the one that recommends to the board of supervisors. So,
But they're gonna look at both the variance and the conditional.
well,
use?
I mean, the planning commission always asks, do you have your variances from the zoning hearing board? Or they make that a condition that they put upon it for their recommendation of approval.
So the
which
zoning
I would
hearing
hear-
board has to grant the variance or make a decision about the variance.
Yes,
And what tract are we on?
you are on the track that would go to the board. You're a recommending
Conditional
body
use,
to the
yes.
board of supervisors.
We're on the conditional use.
You are on the conditional use.
Okay, and if I'm the one who's gonna end up writing a comment letter, we have this land development review form, which you developed last year,
Yeah.
which we've been instructed to use. And is that for the land development plans, that this is not one of them? And
Yeah,
would I use
It's a
this, or would I
similar
use a
process to
different-
land
But what
development.
form would I use?
Use the same form. The difference is just understanding that because it's not land development, you're not going to see some of the things
That
that
we,
you would normally expect to see in a
Yeah,
full
that's
land
right, because we were
development.
asking.
But
for-
I think it would be appropriate. I don't want to mean to interrupt you, but because they're disturbing steep slopes, you may very well want to say, we believe that the least amount of impact to trees on these steep slopes is very important.
Yes.
And even though we have it, there's nothing showing what that is. We would think that the board should expect to know how many trees are going to have to be removed to do that. That should be a condition, and that, or, that if there are trees that are removed to get in, that certain number of trees should be planted back. That may be a condition that you would think ought to be put upon this.
Right.
Even though you may not know that, that may make them have to go and do a count and come back
We
and
do,
tell the board that.
We do have some pictures from the site taken from the street, and
Yep.
also both properties were recently sold. So those pictures are also there. So this is a fully wooded lot.
Yeah, it's
completely-
definitely, it's never been
it's
developed
beautiful,
before.
Right, a beautiful wooded lot. So, all right, so we can only focus on those.
Steve, so you said it was approved like 20, 30 years ago for development, correct?
Phillips Lane.
The subdivision piece was
Okay.
approved. I don't know I say that based on the age of some of the homes I see on there. I'm guessing it was probably about 20, 30.
So it was established that they could build a house in this area.
Yes,
Does that ever expire?
not,
Does it ever get updated?
so think about it like this. If I go to, if I have a lot, whoops. If we get a lot that's created, the lot is created, and it now has, you can't take away the rights of the lot once they've been created. That needs to happen in the land development stage. You have to say this lot would never be buildable, and that was not what's been said about this lot. If we did, I can show you certain pieces of land where the township in the past has said that's not buildable. And usually what ends up happening is we get left with a piece of land with steep slopes and lots of trees.
Yeah.
And it just costs the township money because we're always having to take down trees and
Right.
maintain a steep slope area. Or it's a part of like a part of an HOA, and then the HOA is taking care of that. But once it's put into a lot, it's really hard to come back and say, you can't do anything, because then you're taking away all the rights, and now you've devalued what the properties has value, and that becomes a big issue, and the courts regularly do not allow a community to do that.
Yeah, just as, were there any steep slope requirements or, at that time that the lot was sold? Or was that not ever considered?
Well, at the time, two different issues. At the time the lot was created, I don't know what the steep slope rules were.
Right.
If it was sold 3 years ago, absolutely, but, so they may have known buying it that they would be limited. We can limit certain things. But we can put certain conditions on it, but you can't say they can't do anything.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but I mean, obviously, like, things change. Like, if you're talking of a 20, 30-year span, and I know that you're just guessing, but
Yeah, and it may have been 15, but it's been a while.
Actually happened, like, things like, and development changes, policy changes, and stuff like that, something should be.
Well, I'll
I
give you.
understand that you can't take somebody's right away to make the money on that, but.
Well, you can, so I'll give you an example. Think about, are you familiar with Florida Park, or are you
Yeah.
familiar with the avenues? When I
Yes.
say where First Avenue is in town over by the high school?
Yeah.
Okay, when that was originally laid out, that was laid out in very small lots. I mean, I think some of the lots were as little as 10 feet wide. And I mean, like, really small lots. So,
They were summer.
huh?
They were like the summer homes.
They were,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Like
so, most people bought 2 or 3 or 4, even back here in the Heights. The land development, when the subdivision was done, a lot of times they were very narrow, thin pieces of land, and people often bought, I would like 4 in a row, and then that's what I'm gonna build my house on. And they actually, once they did that, now they become treated as one unit. And back then, when those were originally done, you didn't have a lot of guidelines that were set out. I think Florida Park was done a couple hundred years ago, when it first started. But when it was actually laid out, I think it was in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that it was laid out, and with all the little different pieces of land that you were buying or could buy. And so you have some that would not qualify today to be a building lot. Like, we would never let it happen, but you can't take away the owner's right to do something on that piece of land. Yeah, when you do that, the township could, we could make a decision, try to go buy those lots, but only if somebody's willing to sell them. And are we willing to spend, do we spend $400,000 of taxpayer dollars so that nobody builds on this lot? Well, maybe, but we have to decide that.
Well, I mean, it's a good point that you brought up, but wouldn't that, like, if there was some compensatory, like, value, like, if the codes changed, if somebody decided, oh, you can't do anything with this lot now, and they were compensated for that, wouldn't that be easier than all the money put forth down the line if, like, it caused flood issues for, half the township or something like that?
Yeah, potentially, that could be a suggestion, I guess, is that the township were to offer to buy the lot from the person.
Or the property next door, which has an 11,000 square foot home on 1.2 acres, could purchase this and have a property.
Well, I
that would
will
be-
tell you, the person next door is fighting this as well.
Okay.
So, but,
They should buy the property.
yeah, well, I would have argued he should have bought the property originally, probably.
I would have argued the same because, he's a beautiful home, God bless him, but like, I don't know how they got 11,000, and that's square footage, not including the impervious surface. But I'd have asked, actually, this particular property was sold on July 23rd of 2023. So this particular property was the new one. The previous owner had it for 3 years, couldn't get approval, and then this property was sold. So it's good to have a little bit of history on that. And the individual, when the property was previously subdivided, it was, a tract to the back and a tract to the front, and then they combined them. Because I pulled up the property records here and the tax records. So, it's something we'll address, we'll modify our comments, I think.
I think you ought to make comments, please.
Yeah,
I'm not telling you not to
okay,
make comments.
okay,
I
cool.
really
Well,
think you,
Before the zoning commission, you don't know at this point when they.
it got continued, so it will go on on the next month, and
Now, won't you run out of clock time for this?
well,
particular property?
I'm sure they gave us an extension based on that, is because it got my guess is they'll open the record tonight
Okay,
and they'll just continue it, which then keeps everything just moving.
So Steve, do you have any idea why they pulled it? Like, what's the likelihood they're gonna come back with a different plan?
I think I doubt that they're coming back with a much different plan. I think there might be some questions related to stormwater that they'll be addressing. I don't know what that's going to be.
will they be at this hearing this evening?
You said it was pulled from the
I,
agenda.
it's continued.
Okay.
So I
they
would
don't
say,
have to-
I don't think that if they're there, it's only for the purposes of continuing.
continue. All right, great. All right, so,
No,
anything else?
well,
So
I have a
wanted to
question.
ask-
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
go ahead.
When we submit what we're going to write, can we mention what are the actual steep
Yes.
slope requirements now? So at least somebody who's reading it, even though you
Oh,
say
but
you
it's-
can't
it's-
impose it.
It's right on the plan. It's great. This particular plan did a really good job.
Oh, yeah,
of
it's,
Slope calculation. This is one of the few ones. Well, we're gonna blow it up. We can give them an increased copy of that. Yeah.
Steve, so, in terms of process,
yep, I'm listening.
should we write our comment letter now? Or wait until
Yeah.
they come back with another plan? Especially since we don't need to do it tomorrow because the zoning hearing board isn't going to review it in 7 days' time. That was,
And Eric hasn't gotten a chance to get the engineer's report back as yet as well, because he wants to gather all the information. So that would be great for us to have the engineer's
I
report.
think if you want to wait, I think I hesitate to say, like,
Yeah, I think. we should just
like, I
include
don't
all
know
of
that it's
as
being
they-
pulled from the planning commission yet. And if it goes before the planning commission next week, I know it's being pulled from the zoning hearing. I'm for sure about that. I have not had a confirmation that it's being pulled from the planning commission next week. And if it goes before planning commission next week.
Yeah.
Do you want your
okay, yeah,
comments
I'm
in?
getting confused. The
Yep.
zoning is tonight and planning is next Thursday.
Yes.
But if we want to get our comments in front of planning, we think it's still going to be in front of planning, so
Right.
we should still.
I
write a
don't
letter.
know yet. I
Yeah.
mean, I
But we
mean, I
don't
think
want
our
to miss the
recommendation
opportunity.
would be to continue that one
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
But I haven't heard that as of
All right.
4:30 this afternoon.
Okay, well,
Joe, do you have anything to add before we get into addressing the motion? Okay. So a motion was made that Cindy's going to draft a letter
Yeah.
mentioning our concerns
Yep.
regarding the condition of the,
and some of the recommendations,
Right.
because Steve said to phrase it as recommendations, is recommend a dense vegetated buffer uphill of the infiltration trench, because that is a best practice to ensure effective use of that. Recommend the use of native plants and grasses in the swale. They were using red top and orchard grass, both of which are non-native grasses, and they could use native grasses in the swale. Recommend using low mow grasses instead of traditional turf in the turf area. Recommend least disturbance to trees as possible, and that the board wants to know how many trees above maybe 12 inches DBH are being removed, and ask for
to limit, especially in the area where they're putting
Yeah.
the trench, limit the, if you look back at the
Yes.
back here, they're taking down the center, down by the trench, so to try to keep the trees down by the trench. And that whole side up until, I think it's at 263 is the elevation
in the
point.
trench in the back.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
he's removing the tree
Yeah.
line. Yeah,
Yeah, and that the board should know, they should inform the board of how many trees are being removed, and then we could specify replacement formula of replacement of trees.
The impervious surface for the driveway, it's 5,406 feet, so make that be a impervious,
Impervious surface,
be-
used in the driveway.
yeah, to be
uh,
impervious materials. And also,
then, obviously, do whatever they can to drastically reduce the disturbance to the steep slopes.
because that's not even included any type of further patios they might put on, or sidewalks, or anything if that was not mentioned in the plan. And one thing though we do have to see is to have the water tables tested. I know it's not part of the land development, but Steve, for an infiltration bed, if they're already at the water table level is already high, it's ineffective, just like a rain garden.
Mhm.
So the stream is at 236. He's coming in at, I think, 262, where he's putting in the trench. He's got a 10-foot swale. It's going to be 6 foot deep, 3 foot of stone, and a textile thermal materials. Best practices say that there should be monthly maintenance to remove that, semi-annual, annual. I mean, we sent out the best practices. How are we going to ensure this particular person will stay true to that, you know?
Yeah, I would recommend an O and M agreement and they put funding up.
Yeah.
And let the
Yeah.
township invest in,
I mean, that's
fund 10
standard,
years
but we
worth
only
of
inspect
annual-
once a year.
Right.
If you think it's something that should have more often of an inspection, then I would suggest you put that as a list in your conditions.
And Cindy, can we ask too, if their engineer can come back, see along here? This one here, he's coming at 282, right? And he's gonna put the house at 294, but this whole neighborhood's property, that all goes into a bowl, and he's coming right into this, and it's gonna go straight into there, but on the other side over here, when you come down,
the other way.
see here, this elevation up here is all gonna bypass this right down here. If you looked at his elevation points, so something along the side here, basically to address the neighbors. Coming down into a bowl.
So a stormwater feature on the eastern side to protect the neighbors.
Yeah. Well, to actually to mitigate the neighbors.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the other property, which has a massive footprint, I wish they could do some things with their
But we can't.
impervious surface.
So the other thing we can talk about is recommendations for bird-friendly design in terms of to reduce window strikes and lighting. And we can recommend that the landscape plan align with the Newtown Township Native Plant Resolution.
Yeah. I know that, people that they sent me the water tables of Millhouse Road and the flooding that they've been experiencing for the last 20-some years. And the numbers were just staggering. And this is right below this property. So anything that happens here, every ounce of water is going to add to the burden of these particular individuals. And they were frightened about this. So we will do everything we can to support that. We respect the rights of property developers, property owners to develop their property within following, but we just have to encourage them to follow our ordinances and guidance, and of all of us to work together in harmony. All right, so we're going to put forth a motion. Cindy's going to draft us with all of our concerns, encouraging the zoning to not accept this particular as is, but maybe draft some changes. We could put a big reject, please, up in the corner in red, maybe. A motion was put forth by Sheila O'Sullivan Feeney, seconded by Joe Pinto. Cindy will draft a letter encouraging the property owner to reconsider their plans and encouraging the Board of Supervisors. Yep, yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Right, motion stands. Perfect. All right. Great, guys. Thank you, Cindy, for that. Let's get working on 11, 15, 17. Do we look at them together? I know they're separate properties, Steve, or is it, because a lot of the issues are going to be similar.
Yeah, and this is another one.
Do you have that, Tim? 11?
I'll have to pull it up for you.
Okay. I can send it to you, Steve, if you need that.
No, I think I have it in another spot. I just have to go back and.
The good thing is all EAC members received these plans last week, so we had a chance to review them. Good research on that, guys, and Cindy, we can encourage them to will share best management practices from the DEP for the French maintenance.
So Steve, can I do one letter for all of the Campus Boulevard properties?
I think so. There,
The
because there's
same-
gonna be, there's actually
Oh.
going to be 8. There's 6 before you today, 2 more came in.
Oh, dear God.
And so
It means 6 before us today.
there's, so if I look
Oh,
at
6
this,
extra, yeah.
14,
3 on one
16,
side, 3 on-
18.
Yeah.
The 5, 11, 15, and 17. We also received 335 Bishop Hollow and 7 Campus.
Oh, dear.
So if you're looking on the odd side, it would be basically from Bishop Hollow Road all the way to number 19, which is the last building. And on the even side, it's the buildings at that end coming back for the first 3 buildings. Without going into a lot of detail, I also know that this one is being held off in that I think I can share this with you. The board passed a resolution or passed an ordinance change on Monday night
Yes.
that actually would prohibit what's happening. I believe that the developers put in these plans prior to Monday night so that they could preserve their rights. And so I think we're going to try to have conversations with them as to what other options they're looking at. What we know is this: office space is not being rented, and they are going to do something. What we are trying to figure out is what's the best for over there in doing that. And I will tell you that board members are in different places on this. So, so we'll just have to work through that. We have not even done a full review yet.
Okay.
We think there may be some zoning issues for the current designs. 90% sure at least one of the plans is going to have zoning issues because we don't think there's enough setbacks. So, I mean, I'm not saying don't look at it tonight. I'm not saying don't make comments. I'm assuming that you've come up with some of things here. But what I would say is just understand, I don't know, I don't want to send everybody off in it, like, oh my gosh, the whole place is being changed. I don't know that that's going to be the case today. I just know that the idea is this puts us at the table and talking, and we will have to see.
And we would love for them to at least consider a sustainability village. This is
Yeah.
where the trends are. This is what we could encourage them. If you looked at the information that Cindy just said, we want to, look, it's a development that's been sitting empty, businesses. We'd rather they use empty businesses and redevelop the land versus tearing down trees in good areas. So it's a necessary evil for us to, have these buildings. We accept the fact that this is part of use, but we're saying, let's embrace this opportunity to create a sustainable village. Let's embrace this opportunity for them to have renewable energy resources, look at solar, look at any other possibilities. This is a chance to start anew.
Mhm.
And we would love to remove some of the invasive there, but there's some beautiful trees. So let's re-envision this in a sustainable way, and let's encourage them to do same, because the trends of what buyers are looking for is changed.
And
There's-
Steve, do you know what, or excuse me, were these going to be rental properties or condos?
Luxury apartments or condos?
It
where's it?
just said luxury active adult multifamily,
Right.
or have they not even decided?
He's gonna check through like, okay.
So here's
He's gotta
what I
check
will
all the
tell you.
boxes. See, what can I say?
What was originally the conversation I had was that they would be rentals.
Oh,
Now, whether that is where they are today, I don't know. So I had a conversation with this group about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, that, you know, this was kind of a thing that they were thinking about. We told them that wasn't necessarily where the board wanted to be. We were recommending some other suggestions to them. Then the board took the action that it took, and they came back and obviously took their action to preserve their rights, which that's how this works.
Right.
That's just
Yeah.
how the process goes. So I think that it's fair to say that I think it's a plan that's in motion about where it will be, because I think they're open to some suggestions. But for me to say it's this or
Yeah,
that today,
you can
I
just
don't
say
think
you
I
don't
can.
know.
Yeah,
That's
right.
fine. I
Yeah.
was just wondering because,
Yeah.
to be honest, I was the one that came up with most of the ideas on this list. I did circulate it to other members
Uh-huh.
of the community, other boards and commissions, to get their input. And, as Sheila said, my feeling is it was nice that it was empty, but it was bad that it was empty. So if they're gonna do housing, let's do it right.
Yes.
Let's do it sustainable. Let's make this
Re-envision.
shine.
Yes.
Let's make this
Example for
an
the-
Yes.
example for the future. Let's look at all the things at Alice Preserve or Lister that we don't like
Mm.
and say, can we do this better? Let's look ahead.
Right.
And it's good to hear that they're still formulating.
Yep.
Because I think, you know, I can think of housing developments that I would not like this to be like.
Yep.
And I can think of other developments in town that it's like, okay, that would be nice. There are some really unattractive buildings in our town, new buildings.
It's a personal opinion, so we have to be very
No,
respectful.
Eastern Bloc, they look like the roof lines from Queens or something.
Everyone has
I
their
mean,
opinion.
No, it's like,
I know.
when
we
you
gotta
talk
be
about
careful.
things like beauty, like a sense of place, you know, you go to South, you go to the South, you go to Georgia, whatever, there's a style of
Right.
architecture. There's something that reflects, could it reflect our colonial heritage? Do the buildings in Ellis Preserve reflect the stone buildings that were there for the Charles Ellis School? You know, there's just ways that it could be done more sustainable, like Sheila said, renewable energy, solar energy, innovative, stormwater management techniques, like collecting the water in cisterns and using that to irrigate the grass or to do the pool. I don't even see parking in the 14, 16, and 18.
Oh, they
Maybe
do.
they could, I
Yeah.
didn't see it anywhere. I saw it on the 11, 15, and 17, but not on the other side. What about underground parking garages?
Yes.
You know, you look at La Terraza, they've got the parking underneath, so they're not just surrounded with acres of asphalt. There's just a lot of possibilities for doing things better, nicer, more sustainable.
So you don't think we're gonna be,
So-
this is, where, our action from an EAC perspective, are we seeing this in the planning commission next week or no?
I'm looking here and I just tried to look, I'm
You're trying to
literally
do the-
watching things as they, like, so much
Yeah.
has taken place today.
Right.
And I'm actually on an email that took place today that says that they are going to be put off until the 28th of March, which is the you would have a meeting between now and
Right.
then. So my recommendation would be, I'm going to recommend that you hold off if you're okay with this. You may be looking at the exact same plans in a month and I not have any changes for you, but I think it would be potentially a best use of your time to hold off. I think this is a good start.
Yeah,
I've
and
looked
if
at
you
it for
can
2
express-
seconds,
yeah,
but
if you can express the concerns from the EAC perspective,
I will.
that this is an opportunity to really reinvent this
This
whole
is,
area.
this is an opportunity to really focus on sustainability.
And what's great
and
is the
do-
bus already drives through that area.
Yeah.
And these are incredible opportunities. You're right near a park. I mean, walkability is there, the biking, the trail. I mean, this is such a phenomenal way that we can really look at this. So,
Yeah,
Would they like to sit down with us?
yes, I
Discuss
would love that.
Yeah.
I would love it. But I am another concern just at everything being luxury. You know, I am an older person now. I'm getting up there. But, you know, I am a little concerned about opportunities for,
Affordability.
affordability for, like, there's people in this community that they're living in houses, they're not gonna be able to afford those, and they're gonna have to go into rent. So if everything is luxury and high end, the rents that some of the senior members pay is the amount of their social security checks to live in the towers and things. And I'm just concerned that we make sure that everyone has a table and at the place here, that we try to make space for everyone. And if everything is high end, is it really fair to some of our disadvantaged residents to make
Yeah.
sure that everyone's thought of? So
And Steve, just a couple other comments. If you go to the very end of the form, and these are things I think you could probably answer tonight, or at least raise. Somebody raised the concern about an influx of students to Culbertson
Yeah.
School.
oh God,
So
yeah.
they're saying that this is going to be active adult, but how do they ensure that? Do they
Well,
have?
so the requirements that they're focused under, okay, there is that it's R5 is the zoning.
What does
For
that mean?
that. So that's what I'm going to talk
Yeah,
about for
R5.
just a second.
This is
So R5 allows for what we call senior living, which
55 plus.
is 55 plus, which makes me feel old all of a sudden.
See, I said I was in that club. Steve, I said I was in that club. 55
Okay,
plus.
so the definition you said allows for.
Yes.
But does that mean that people under 55 are not
Well,
allowed there?
what
Like,
I
how
would
can
say
they
this is that,
assure that you're not gonna have kids there?
yeah, so, well,
Grandparents and
I mean, here was an argument somebody made. My parents were 50 when they had me.
Yeah, but that's
So,
not the norm.
but I mean, that was an argument. Okay. So will there be any kids living there? My guess is if you say that somebody's 55 is the
Teenagers, yeah.
requirement, then my guess is there will potentially be some children there. We live in a day and time when grandparents are raising their
children.
kids.
Yep.
So for me to say there's no way there's going to be children there, there's nothing that
No,
I can do
You're
to
not
keep
gonna
that
see
from
But
happening.
I'm saying, would there
But
be a
what-
55 and over requirement?
There is a 55 and older requirement, the way it is zoned today. Yes.
The way it is zoned today?
Well, actually, the way it was zoned as of before Monday night.
Oh,
So, and that's how this was submitted. So this,
Okay.
it has to be submitted for 55 and over. What I'm saying in that is that doesn't preclude any children from being there,
I
but it
realize
does keep somebody from 25 going in
Yeah.
and buying it to raise their family.
Okay,
Okay,
so
is
that,
11 Campus Building own LLC the property owner for all of these buildings in question or no?
The
11 Campus LLC?
The 11 campus is the owners for 11, 15, 17, 14, and 18.
Oh, so there are two separate owners, so we will have to have
no,
probably
you can
separate.
let him
letters.
finish.
The number 16, I believe, is owned by another owner.
Yes.
What I don't know is, do they have an agreement of, like, they may have an agreement of sale,
Oh,
and I don't know that.
Okay.
Because I don't. Can't, 35 Bishop Hollow and 7 is a different owner.
okay.
But that one's just came in. We just got that at the end of last week.
Okay.
So again, 11, 15, 17, and 14, 18 is one owner,
Yes,
and 16 is a separate owner,
yes.
and then 35 or 335, 235?
335 Bishop
Bishop
Hollow,
Hollow.
which is the one that fronts Bishop Hollow down here when you,
That's
it's
the
right on
old
the,
Apple Leisure?
that's the
Yeah.
old Apple Leisure.
Okay.
And 7, which is the one right behind it,
Yes.
Okay.
that's a different owner.
Okay, okay, great, so.
And like I said, 16 may be under contract and I don't know that. Like,
Okay.
you know, I don't know.
Okay.
If
Okay,
you can, I think it'd be great, Cindy, if we could encourage that business owners to come to our Sustainable Newtown Square Green Business Coalition. We'll have an opportunity to encourage sustainability, invite them to the table, and that'll be a great,
Yeah.
if we can.
So in terms about putting demand on the community's infrastructure, so we talked about influx to the schools.
Mhm.
The second is water usage. You're going from an area where there was like no water consumption to now much heavier water consumption. And is there any concern from Aqua or whoever provides our water that they'll have the capacity for this? I know others, there was a state, Pennsylvania declared a drought last summer. There are communities in New Jersey and New York that are confronting a lack of water supply.
Yeah, I don't know if
Something
I
that
can
they-
answer that
No,
question
I'm
tonight.
not
I don't.
expecting an
Yeah.
answer. I'm just
Yeah.
raising.
Well,
it.
you had earlier said you may have an answer to that one. That's not one I have an answer to.
Yeah. Okay, this one you might have an answer for. You're now going to have at least 300 units, maybe 400 or 500 units. Wastewater treatment.
Yep.
That is a concern. I know I've heard you and the board talk about that before, about the capacity that is available in town and landowners trading off capacity.
So the system was built to handle X number of units. There's a certain amount of flow that's already dedicated to Campus Boulevard based on the fact of what was the size of the building.
And that it was an office building.
That was an office
the
building, which
weekend.
is so many units per 1,000 square foot of office space. And there's like a whole calculation that goes into that. They pushed back and wanted to do less because they were using less. There was a whole piece, the building owners there, we came up with a formula based on what was actually built. They built for 26,000 gallons a day from that location. And so I was very clear with the property owners at the time that if a change happened, and this is a change, then they would have to go through the planning process like a new developer to determine whether or not there would be capacity, not only within the township. I happen to believe that we built our system for that capacity. We purposely planned for a certain level. Our pump system is actually overbuilt. We did that on purpose because we wanted to, the pumps actually work more efficiently at a certain spot. And so we built for that efficiency, not necessarily what their capacity is. If that makes sense. But the issue may not even be ours. The issue may be what the downstream folk, we don't process waste in town.
Right.
All of what we are is a conveyance system. So we convey, and it goes from us to what's CDCA, and then CDCA then sends it down to Delcora. Today, I don't know that Delcora can take on that additional amount. I don't know.
So
So
is-
that would be something that they would have to go through a planning process with. That may require them making an investment. I just don't know that answer at this
Or
time.
scaling back their property
Or
size.
scaling
Yeah.
back their project.
So in terms of the work streams and the approval streams and them seeking, because it's that owner's responsibility to
Yep.
get what they need or want. How does that happen timing wise in tandem with or parallel with the township here? Like, was the township
So-
have to consider a development before they get the
So here's
wastewater?
probably here's what I would think would happen, and I'm not the solicitor. I'm speaking like if I'm the person that's sitting on the end trying to figure it out, there'd be two things. This would come in first as a conditional use. This is the first step. They would also have to come in for land development. So my guess is if I came in for conditional use with this, I would expect the township to say, we will give this with the following conditions. And one of the conditions would probably be that you were to get the needed sewer capacity and water capacity certified by both the municipal authority and through Aqua, right? The water through Aqua, because we don't do our own water. And then the other capacity through the municipal authority. The municipal authority is only going to approve what we do in town, but then requires them to go downstream. If you don't get that, then you can't build it. You may do that. And then, so there's a way to take that step and require them to go through that process prior to being able ever to develop, because they would have to have that approval before they move forward.
Okay, so you said that it is likely that they'll need conditional use approval and land development.
Well, I shouldn't have said likely. They
They
will need,
Okay, so therefore, because I'm thinking, what are we gonna have to do and what will we
you're going to
see?
see this plan twice.
Okay, so when we got these documents now, the documents that we got for the odd numbers and the even numbers were not comparable. It
No,
was not the same set of information.
Okay.
no.
And to me, it was woefully insufficient for the scope and the scale of the plan that were expected. And so my question is this, is when it goes through land development review, will we see a more extensive set of?
Absolutely have to.
Okay,
So this conditional use is basically, think about it like, it's trying to think about the best way, trying to
is
think
it
of a
an either
correlation.
or a sequential with the conditional use and then land development?
It can be,
Like, would they get the conditional use before they put the effort into doing the land development?
that's what they're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason being is land development plans are very involved. You
Yeah.
know, this project would probably be a land development plan about
Yes.
this thick. What you saw is what, 5 pages, 6
Yeah,
pages? I forget what it was
We
exactly.
were all wondering, where's all the detail? And that's
There's
where we
no
all started-
detail.
yeah,
Again, it's very similar to what 14 is
Right,
because it's literally conditional.
Very
It's-
early in the
it's-
process.
Well, it's very early in the process for this because there is land development that would be required. But think about it. I view land development actually kind of almost like creates the model. And you would potentially see, what would go up and, you would know that it's going to be a 3-story building and it's going to be this and it's going to be that and all those kind of things. Conditional use is basically saying we have to meet what requirements are said in the R5 district. And if we come in and meet those requirements, the conditional use basically gives the township the opportunity to say, you've met those, but you still have to have these following conditions in order to do this. And so this is a chance to put some conditions out there that the developer has to follow. And so, for example, you may want to say that and the board's going to do this, but you may want to, as a recommendation, say they need to get their SOAR approval prior to coming in with land development, or at least simultaneously with land development. The challenge there might be that if the township says you can only do 15 units versus 20 units on this particular building, when you go into land development, that may be, but you can also set those conditions early on. You could set a condition that they may say you can do this, but you can't have more than X number of units. I believe that the way the conditional use is written, they can get, I believe one is 28 acres and it's 10 acres, it's 10 units per acre, or maybe it's 12 units per acre. I have to look at it again. But whatever size it is, it's a fairly large number that they can do. But you can, like, if you want, like, you have some things in here I'm looking at quickly, like you want to increase walkability. And so one of the conditions would be that they have to put a trail in, or they have to maintain the designated bike lanes, and that it should be going into the areas that they develop as well as the ones that are out on the street that we put in.
yes.
I'm just looking at some of what you have
And
here.
we would also like the data that they use to collect, like the park spacing is based on like 25-year-old data. And now in the event of shared driving services like Uber and Lyft, do we still need to hold on to the old ordinances in terms of the parking spots? Can we?
Well, one of the things that and you could make this recommendation to the board, and we might do this more down in land development than we
Yes.
would do under the conditional use. And we've done this in a couple of the projects, and we've said, you need to maintain the space,
Yes,
but you don't need to put in the asphalt.
yes.
And, we want you to, like,
Parking.
I think we allowed 40
lots there were
spaces not to
circled.
be put in over at Ellis Preserve. Because we said, there's no reason to have 40 spaces that you're not gonna have anybody parking in.
Yeah.
And, and maybe one of the conditions of the land development we want to say is they need to bring in a study showing that 55 and older communities need 1.3 spots per unit versus the 2.4 unit spots that and I'm making
Yeah.
numbers up, but those are the kind of things that I think that would be, like if you're environmentally thinking, what I see here, I think makes sense.
Right.
And it's a way of kind of putting out there of suggestions.
Do
And
you think there's any benefit at Drexel? They have sustainability, and in Penn, they have sustainability engineering programs, and they kind of look at town development. We could maybe encourage one of those students to kind of come in and provide some of that input and information in terms of what else is possible, what's out there, because
a lot of times, you know, these things, what we're talking about.
Are you saying the student to speak with the developer or
No,
the student to speak
student
with
come-
you?
Come in and give suggestions that what's out there.
Well, why
you know.
a student? Why not a professor?
Well, I'm saying, get a whole class, take on the project with us,
Well,
absolutely.
I would rather suggest something like, that they look towards, you know, there's all kinds of green building
Yes.
standards. You know, there's bird-friendly standards, there's LEED, there's energy, it's in there, you know,
Yeah.
Like a
Energy
10
Star
runner facility,
appliances,
Yeah,
things like that.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of established guidelines that they could look to if
Yeah.
they're not aware of that
Who
themselves.
are they using? for this?
Bowler
Maybe
or-
they have-
Bowler's
Bowler
the,
was the
Bowler's the engineer.
all of the plans are just for the 11, 15, 17.
No, I think Bowler's all of the.
All right. So for us, then, we won't necessarily draft a
anything
letter. We
right now.
discussed it, and then we will continue this at our March meeting. And in the meantime, we encourage our EAC members to look into these plans, dig a little deeper, and hopefully, Steve, you'll be able to update us. Maybe in the meantime, we'll have the engineer's report for all of these properties, because I know Eric is inundated, especially since everything's been added. But in terms of for us, we don't need to take an action in terms of making movement, but we need to get moving on the other projects, correct? We don't need any action. All right. New business. This is discussion and possible action, EA supporting the Historical Society for the Newtown Square Buzzing Through History. If everyone's seen this, this is a Beekeeper's Journey Master Beekeeper Warren Graham on Wednesday, February 21st at 7 p.m. Janet, you will be there discussing native plants. Anything else you want to add on that?
Yes, I'll be doing at Kathy Cavalier's invitation.
Wonderful.
a Tabling event about pollinating plants that we can use to support our pollinators. And I understand that this is kind of a history of
Yes.
beekeeping. It's not that they're
Promoting.
promoting beekeeping, 'cause
Which
we
we're
had that
not.
conversation
Yes.
here. But we will certainly be stressing the need to support our native bees, of which we have about 4,000 different.
Right.
And we're having a real pollinator bug crash of bugs that feed our birds. So it's important that we support our bees and our pollinating bugs through our pollinating.
All right, perfect. All right, anything else you need on that, Janet? All
Not
right,
on that.
item number 8.2. Now, this is our spring event, so we want to kind of assisting, the EAC is going to have a really busy spring. Looking at CRC, the Drexel Lodge Park, that'll be on Saturday, March 16th from 9 to 11:30. I've already registered and the EAC has been sharing out that information, which is great. We are waiting for DCBAs to set their stream cleanup, which we believe will be in the middle of April, but Wade Pollock, who is the coordinator, hasn't gotten the date yet, but as soon as I have that, I will share that out. And what's great is we will be sharing this out with our green business leaders and communities to encourage them to volunteer as well. Cindy, we will be supporting the Shade Tree Commission for the annual Arbor Day event. Do you have any other information update from Trish on that? Okay. I have, I've reached out to Trish. I'm still waiting for the data. Have you heard anything, Steve? Okay, okay.
I've not.
We're fully waiting standby. I will, Cindy, if you can send another email to her. We'll do whatever we need to do, but we do have to have an Arbor Day event to be in compliance with our Tree City USA. So we'll do whatever that needs to be done. And Cindy, we were talking about the proposed EAC Rain Garden, Native Plant and Pocket Meadow Workshop. We've given through a list of events for last year. Anything that you want to add on those?
No, what I would say is definite is that there is a Saturday, April 6th meeting of the Rain Garden out front,
April 6th, okay.
April 6th,
What time will that be at?
9.
And what day is April 6th? Is that a-
Saturday.
Saturday, okay. What about the rain gardens? But I know there is one that the DCBA is putting out, I think is March 2nd or 9th. We shared that information.
Yep.
What about the Pocket Meadow and the idea you have for the,
I think you're looking at a
No.
list there.
yeah, the mother compost, any of those happening, you think?
Yes, I have information on these. I didn't know if you want me to do it now.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, good. So, Birdtown sponsored a webinar last Thursday on shade grown coffee with Willstown Conservation Trust and Blake Gall from Willstown Conservation Trust had an outstanding presentation to talk about the connection of shade grown coffee with our migrating birds. And she really highlighted what Willistown Conservation Trust is doing in terms of banding birds and also through MODIS to be able to track birds and see exactly where they are going. And then brought out the fact that much of our coffee is now grown on stripped land where they just have the coffee plants and they do not have the canopy that is necessary for our migrating birds. So all the birds that we appreciate in our yard in the summer, most of those have come up from Central America. So they have partnered with Griffin Cafe to produce a shade-grown coffee, and they offer it there through Willstown Conservation Trust and also at Griffin Cafe. And I really would like our neighbors to, our residents here, to know this story about what Willistown Conservation Trust is doing, because they do amazing work.
Yes.
And they even have a Newtown Square address, even though they live in Willistown. It's just an amazing place. If you ever had an opportunity to go band the bird and hold it in your hand to let it go, it's an experience that you won't forget. So we're hoping that Blake will come to help us with an in-person event. And Saturday, Cindy and I are going to on a hike at Willistown. Blake will be there. She responded to me today so that we can talk about when we might be able to do an in-person event here.
Great.
With the township. So that's one thing. Now, we're also in conversation with Master Watershed presenter Sarah Jeffries about composting. We could do an in-person event here. I asked her whether or not evening event would work or a Saturday. She said that in-person could work in the evening. She would do a demonstration as well as have a presentation on it. So we want to, I reached out to them, well, Cindy and I agreed that we can't like reach out to Mother Compost because that's a company.
Yes.
We don't want to, or Rock Star is another one. So we want to have a third party to be able to make a presentation on the importance of composting and what our residents can do. Then I also wanted to mention that we have set up our bird walk for what happens to be Global Bird Migration Day, May 11th.
Right.
And I reached out to Garrett Williamson. They are happy to have us come again. And Phil Whitmere, who gave our Great Backyard Bird Count in-person event on January the 24th. Phil has offered to lead that walk, and Mike McGraw doesn't have his schedule set yet, so we're hoping that he's part of that too.
Janet, is that bird walk the one at Garrett Williamson?
Yes.
Yes. May
Okay,
11th.
because I
I
had,
don't know what that one is.
Yeah,
I know there's another one there. That's
There-
not one that we did. March. It's in
no.
May 6th. I think,
Which his date was wrong, it's
Yeah.
May 4th, but he has a bird walk at Garrett Williamson. And you have a bird walk.
Ours is the 11th.
yeah,
And it's,
I
again,
I
it
think
was
everyone
booked-
was
it's at
talking
Garrett
about,
Williamson?
Newtown Square and Bloom had sent us some dates and that we're trying.
Well,
to
I
don't know
don't
exactly
think there's
what
two.
that
I don't.
So
I
we're
doubt
down for the
there's two.
11th, right?
See,
down
because
for
he
the-
has the replanting the rain garden on the
Yeah,
11th.
he-
This is
he-
Paul, this is
Awesome.
Paul's
Oh,
date.
so,
Yep.
no.
Okay,
So I don't think his.
So
We'll
the,
check on that.
Janet, also, do you
Yeah.
want to mention this weekend is the actual bird count and the township did share out your information. Anything else on that?
I just wanted to give a shout out to Leonard, who was present for our great backyard bird count, and they missed it.
I was there too. All right.
Right, and then Leonard really got out a lot of the pictures and all, and I wanted to thank Cindy for putting together a logo, the whole thing.
Perfect.
Yeah, I've learned how to use a new software tool.
All right, sorry to rush you through, but I know there's some time commitments. Okay, item 8.3, EAC's content for Township's March newsletter. I'm gonna need that content, and really, we have to get everything through me so that I can send it to Jamie. They want one channel, and the reason being is sometimes we have to prioritize or limit what we send. So if everyone can give
When do
me
you need that again?
March 8th, Friday, March 8th, any-
Five, three.
by anything you need for the magazine to consider. And we want it to be timely, so it's going to drop at the end, middle of March, so maybe the 19th or 20th of March. So anything that in that time period, and it will go from that till the next one would be in the middle of April. So thing of that nature, if you can let me know, that'd be great. Old business update and discussion on possible action to further support the Sustainable Newtown Square Green Business Coalition. First of all, the March 8th mini conference is coming off really well. We are lucky that we have Francine Locke, who is the director of the Chief Sustainability Officer for Delaware County, is one of our speakers. And we were encouraging our businesses. The invitation went out. It will be an invitation to our green business leaders. These are the businesses who have already taken the pledge. And we also are inviting members of the Newtown Square Business Association. This is not open to the general public because this is a business program that we're trying to encourage sustainability. And it's coming together. We're actually having it at Boram. I had a great discussion with a potential market research company today who's looking if they're going to be our speaker. They would be having to donate their time to do so. So we think that will be it, but it'll be great. For us, the cost associated with that, and we do have it within our budget. I don't know if we need to, we're gonna have to pick up, the Boron is hosting us. So we've already put that into our budget, the Danishes, those type of coffee type things. And then, if we can, that'd be great. Actually, what's great is Boron is using a compost. They have their compost facilities. We're going to be using, we're trying to make sure we try as best as possible to be zero waste. So we're going to try to use coffee cups. We have bamboo spoons, bamboo, everything. So we're really on target to make sure that and Boron is very supportive and financially supporting this program, which is really good because we could not afford to do it to the level that they are accustomed to, and they are going to pick up that tab. So we're thrilled. I also want to let you know that the township did a great job in supporting some of our green business leaders. These are just some of the businesses, and these are important that we acknowledge these businesses for taking the time to go out and make a difference in their community. And it's not just about, putting on the sustainable logo on your page. They're trying to incorporate this into their daily business practices. And that's a great thing. In addition, we have our supervisors, all of them who have taken the pledge. And we want to make sure we have our police chief. I've got photos of the police chief, fire chief. I've got photos of Girl Scouts, everyone. So we will be sharing out more of those photos, and that's great news. And here where else? Oh, yes, and the community outreach bags. We had a struggle with the vendor with the bags. Suzanne knocked it out of the park, and we were able to get that solution. I have all of the new bags delivered yesterday, so I'm delighted.
I still owe you a picture.
I
Apologize.
yeah, I
I'll
want,
get that to you.
I have Joe's adorable children who are thing, and in addition, I was up at this Acme this weekend, and the Girl Scouts from Culbertson were selling the Girl Scout cookies. And so I said to them, listen, if anyone buys 4 or more boxes of cookies, I gave them each troop 5 bags that they could encourage them to buy. But they had to tell me what sustainability meant for them, how could they encourage it. And we actually are going to go to the Girl Scouts and kind of give them a chance to earn a badge and all that stuff. Culbertson,
When did you
this
do that?
weekend.
What, my daughter was there on Friday.
It was the Saturday and Sunday crew. I
Yeah,
have
my daughter
photos
was there
of them.
Friday night.
Well,
They sold a little over $100.
I have cookies I have to buy them. You have
I
my
know,
cookies.
yeah.
Okay.
After the meeting, let's go.
And they're sustainable cookies. Joe is gonna sell us those cookies.
No, they
Just-
disappeared down mine.
No, they're sustainable because they're gone in seconds. There's no
They're
remaining.
vanishing.
All right, so that's really, it on item, oh, now, so I think that's it for all of our items.
I had one more.
Yes,
I wanted to mention that I had, yesterday, on, Tuesday, attended the Valley Forge Audubon Advocacy Committee, which I sit on.
yes,
And also with Shirley Dotson, who is the chair of that committee, and the Birdtown member or chair of Swarthmore. And their township is presenting a Lights Out proclamation,
yes.
which I sent around to everyone here to have a opportunity to look at what they had. And I would like to suggest that in March that we come together with a proclamation that we can present to the supervisors for Lights Out, because that's right, the month before.
And when will the
What
lights
would
out,
it cover? What is the proclamation?
basically, they're supporting, just like the
Lights
Philadelphia
out one
program.
day, 1 week, all year? What is
Well,
it?
it also talks about what kinds of things you can do all the time.
But the proclamation is for one day. It's a Philadelphia Lights Out program. Cindy?
Yes, right.
Okay,
right. I
I
did
just-
send it around.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I didn't read it. I
Okay,
was
so
busy,
Janet,
but-
what we can do, and that day is, I think, what is it, April 10th, or what is the date of the event? Right. So what we can do, this would be a great opportunity for us to mention this at our Sustainable Business Conference, encouraging them. Because if we could get like SAP or some of the bigger businesses to take that proclamation, I know the township doesn't like to just make proclamations for the sake of proclamations unless we have somebody supporting that. So if you want to take ownership of that and we can encourage that, that would be something we can,
But when you say somebody's supporting that. I
Yeah,
mean,
what do you mean?
meaning, in meetings to make sure that we go back to the businesses, that we go back to the supervisors, that we have this thing, that it's just not a proclamation, we're supporting
That
it,
we
but
do
we're trying to
something
get
about it.
businesses to be on board with this.
Well,
trying
and
to get
also
them to
just
turn off
be
the lights.
aware
Yes.
that what lights are,
And-
lights are doing.
Yes,
And what day is that again?
Uh, I didn't have a particular day.
yeah, it's
Well, 'cause
usually
you
Lights
said-
Out Philly, I can pull that up, but Lights Out
Were you
Philly has a
thinking
date.
of coinciding it with Lights Out Philly? Or? No, the reason I ask is that you said April, and I thought we're having this March deadline
Yes.
for the newsletter. So if there is some time sensitivity, that would be an argument for trying to get something in the March newsletter.
I'll,
The migration date start on April.
Yeah, it's
Right.
just a period
You
of
were
time.
thinking of April 1st and May
May
31st, and then August
Right.
and November. That's
Okay.
the date.
so
Yeah.
I think it happened in April. I see it happening in April.
Okay, so if Lights Out Day or whatever was supposed to be in April, and you wanted the board to pass a proclamation, and you wanted to publicize that after the fact, you've got to
Well, that's why I
back
wanted.
that up,
I
and we
wanna-
got to get
I
on the
wanted to
board's
have it in
agenda.
March that we pass it.
Early March.
When we, oh, okay.
So what we can do is discuss it at the mini conference to make sure businesses are aware of it. Talk with supervisors in the meantime to make sure that we're encouraging their support, because we just don't want to throw proclamations at them. We've got to encourage to see if they're interested to see it, because they have a lot of things on their things that takes time and energy for them to even review these things. So we want to make sure that they would be encouraged to do so, and then get the businesses, because if we can get like SAP, AmeriHealth, and all those other businesses to turn off their lights, that's how we could
are
bring
you-
attention to the issue.
So are you saying that you would want to kind of test the level of business interest
Yep.
on Friday, March 8th?
Yep.
And then based on that, then approach the board afterwards?
Yeah, I
to
think we
find out
need to
that
have
there is
some- Somebody big
enthusiasm.
who says that they're gonna turn off their lights or turn down their lights or do something to back it up.
Okay.
I think that's
We'll
fair.
talk further.
Yeah,
And Steve, when are the board meetings in March? If we were to target a March.
Board meetings in March are the
First and third or second?
11th and the 25th.
probably the 11th. Because we will be giving our annual report, read two at that time, and then we'll give a follow-up for the mini conference up there.
So can we approve the proclamation without us being at a meeting together? Because we won't meet again until the third week in March.
So we could approve the wording of the draft
Right, so we
to
could.
have it
yeah.
ready if on the
Right.
8th you get.
So we could put
support.
forth a motion that Jana Carvanas is interested in promoting Lights Out Philadelphia.
Yeah.
She has a draft
Right.
of the thing that she will share with EAC members and getting support from the supervisors and looking with businesses who will undertake turning down their lights for that event. And everyone, if you've read that proclamation, is there anyone have any issues with that proclamation? Does anyone want to second that motion?
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion was made by Sheila O'Sullivan Feeney, seconded by David Galash for Janet to be empowered to
Yes.
run with the Lights Out program. But you have to gauge interest from the supervisors and from businesses to see if they want to
Okay.
go. Because from what I understand, and in respect of the supervisor's time, they just don't like to have proclamations without, making sure that we do something about them because they are important. And this is an important work. Lights Out means something for you and for all of us, so.
And
What-
when is
and
the
for the
shake
birds.
ground coffee thing?
When will that event be?
Yep.
That will, maybe we can determine that on Saturday when we talk with Blake. I mean,
We had targeted a date.
we said early April, right?
Okay.
Yes,
So
right.
that is another action step to support this because at the shade grown coffee thing, it would talk about what you can do here to support
Right.
birds. And it would be talked about at that event. It would also be talked about at the, Garrett Williamson Bird Walk.
Right,
Right.
but you want to have your graphics done by March 7th so they can be turned in for the magazine by March 8th.
The graphics about the
The
Lights
ad-
Out proclamation.
Anything that you want to go into the March
But how
magazine.
can we do the proclamation?
I don't think we
No,
can
no,
put
the
that in.
bird,
Yeah, the
or-
bird walk, the
yeah,
bird events.
the bird
Can
events,
be promoted.
the
Yes.
coffee events, all of
Yep,
the,
yep, yep.
perfect.
But not the Lights Out proclamation,
No.
because we haven't gotten that approved.
No.
All right, item 9.3, I did see Rich today as he was walking out of the building. I was going to get him, but he was on the phone. So this is a review, discussion, of possible action on the riparian buffer wetlands draft ordinance submitted by the township solicitor. We are still waiting on that document. So at this point, this is going to be continued to next month. In addition, I don't know why that's not missing, but also our lawn ordinance is missing from this. This was, I didn't realize it. Our lawn ordinance draft review is missing, but we will again continue that for next month. I know Rich is very busy and I understand with all these other issues, I can see where he's been busy, but we will follow up on that. And the annual report, I have my piece done. We're going to be presenting that to the Board of Supervisors in March. Cindy and I will have that together and everyone will have a final chance. We've already reviewed all of the content. It's just making sure everyone gets the final. It will not go before the supervisors without each one of you okaying that. And the great news is all 4 of our members will be at the EAC Regional Conference this Saturday, February 28th from 9 a.m. to 4 a.m. And we will be learning some things. I also want to give a shout out to, I don't know if anyone saw this, Newtown Square Friends and Neighbors. We have a business, J&K Trash. And what's great about them, they're a Newtown Square business, but they took the time in their advertising dollars to talk about the circular economy. And they were talking about instead of just throwing everything in the trash, they gave us opportunities where we could use some of those things, turn in medical equipment, glasses, cell phones, sporting equipment, crayons, wine corks. It was really impressive to see that a business thought about something other than just their trash. They were saying, let's repurpose, let's reuse, and they used their dollars. And I was really, really impressed with it. And I think that just was something that was honorable for them to do. And I think that's great. And I really appreciate that. And item 9.6, Newtown Township EAC was registered as an affiliate member of the We Can Serve PA, which thank you to the supervisors. Thank you to the township for supporting that. We've got some opportunities that we will be embracing, and that's all good news. And anything for public comment before we adjourn? Whew, tiring day, isn't it, Beth? Anything, Beth, that you'd like to mention? Anyone else in comments? Whew, we are, oh, sorry, excuse me, before I forgot to get the EAC. Then, Dave, anything, comments that you would like to have?
Nope.
Joe?
No.
Janet?
Okay.
Cindy?
No.
Oh, we are adjourned. Woo-hoo.
Lordy,
So I have to tell you, I